Meanwhile, let's turn our attention to Ben Habib. He's former Brexit Party MEP, and he joins me now. Ben, very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us here on Talk.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, Keir Starmer, he's eyeing up five priorities in a Brexit reset set of negotiations. Briefly discuss those with Ryan Saby. There are some things that some people might not mind. So what we got here, cross-border youth mobility, EU Creative Europe programme, the Galileo satellite scheme, the Iris to space programme and data roaming. I mean, I can't imagine that joining a space programme or indeed data roaming are particularly controversial, are they?
Well, I think joining the space programme is controversial because what we will be doing in the space programme is giving over our ability to construct and guide our own systems to the European system. And
we can't do it on our own, can we?
Well, we can certainly do it in the Anglosphere. We don't need to do it within the EU sphere.
So do you think that we should join with America and I mean, arguably, they're slightly better in space than the Europeans anyway, so maybe we should join with them?
If there's a choice between the United States and Europe, I would go for the United States every single day of the week.
But presumably with Peter Mandelson as our US ambassador, we haven't got a hope in hell of getting that.
No, I think Mandelson was a particularly bad choice of ambassador. I know people talk about his phenomenal brain power, but that brain power was deployed, as you and I will well remember from his time in office, to the very significant detriment of this country. And Starmer, frankly, as far as I can see, is being guided by Blair, who's the arch Europhile. Starmer himself is an arch Europhile. Mandelson is a Europhile. None of these people are going to actually deliver the kind of independence that the British people voted for in 2016 when we voted to leave the European Union. And as you probably also know, James, Starmer was caught when he thought he was off camera in Montreal in September 2023, saying that if he were ever to become Prime Minister, he would align us so closely with the EU that we might as well be members. So his red lines, his so-called red lines of not joining the single market, the customs union, freedom of movement, they're not red lines. This reset is not some kind of bargain where the United Kingdom gets something in return for the concessions he makes. He's just going to concede, and concede because that's what he wants to do. And one of the areas which he's already basically said he's going to concede in is sanitary and phytosanitary issues, agricultural product, animals, and fauna and flora. And if he does that, our ability to establish international trade deals, for example, with the United States of America, will be seriously compromised. This man cannot be trusted with the sovereignty of the United Kingdom.
OK, so that's clear. But if you feel so strongly about this, why did you walk away from Nigel Farage and Reform UK if that was the only party that was going to perhaps follow this narrative and agenda that you say that you would like?
Well, I don't want to have a go at reform. I've made my position clear on reform a number of times. My biggest bugbear with reform is that it's not democratised, and contrary to all the promises made, it's a party that is still 60% owned by Nigel. But the other difference between Nigel and me, since we're on the subject, is that Nigel says Brexit's done. And I don't think Brexit was ever delivered. We voted to leave the EU. We voted for the United Kingdom to leave the EU. We didn't vote for Great Britain to leave and for Northern Ireland to be left behind. We didn't vote for an Irish Sea border. We didn't vote, as Boris Johnson delivered, regulatory alignment in matters of state aid, competition, employment, and crucially, the environment. We didn't vote, as is stated in the TCA, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement that Boris Johnson signed, that we would stay committed to the European Convention of Human Rights. None of that was part of the Brexit vote in 2016. We wanted to cut our ties with Europe, and Brexit has not been done. And so that is a slight difference between Nigel and me as well. Quite an important one, actually.
Quite an important one, fair enough. Let me just ask you, though, about the numbers which have been published this afternoon. More than 150,000 migrants have arrived in the UK after crossing the English Channel in small boats since 2018. 407 people crossed the Channel on 10 boats on Boxing Day, bringing the government's tally to 150,243. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, says the government has a moral responsibility to tackle Channel crossings. They don't seem to be doing very much about about it. What would you say that they should be doing about it? Because it clearly hasn't slowed down, and it didn't slow down under the Tories, and it isn't slowing down under Labour.
No. What's happened in Western civilized world is a forgetfulness about what the purpose of borders is and how borders need to be enforced. And the enforcement of one's border is not a legal process. It's a physical process. It requires having dedicated individuals at the point of entry to the country in question, deterring people physically from seeking to enter the country illegally. And the Belgians, for example, in order to prevent dinghy launches from their own shores, have developed a dedicated force using sensors, drones, barricades, fast-moving boats, etc., to intercept dinghies and send them back to the Belgian shore. And that has reduced launches off the Belgian shore by 92%. But what we need to rediscover right across Europe, the United Kingdom and the United States is that borders are vital for the protection of civil society within countries. And I'm delighted to see Trump obviously standing for firm borders for the United States. I hope that will set a trend in Europe. We're already seeing, as it happens, Germany recognizing that the only way it's going to get a grip of illegal migration into its country is to repudiate, in a sense, the Schengen zone, the taking down of borders, the freedom of total freedom of movement across Europe, and unilaterally putting its borders in place, much to the irritation of countries around Germany, because they know that the illegal migrants that Germany rejects will then go to their countries. But if every country in Europe reacquainted themselves with the need for borders and how they should be physically enforced, we wouldn't have the problem in the Channel. Because once they got to Italy, they'd find it extremely difficult to make it to Calais, as it happens at the moment. Once they've got to Italy, they can go anywhere they like in Europe.
It's certainly an issue that will continue, I'm sure, to exercise minds, and probably we'll hear plenty more about it as those crossings continue. Ben Habib, former Brexit Party MEP, thank you very much indeed for joining us.